I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Okay. On behalf of the Governing Board, I want to welcome you all to tonight's meeting. It is Tuesday, June 11th at 6:30. This is a regular meeting of the Catalina Foothills School District Governing Board. Members of the public are attending both in person and remotely through YouTube Live. In a few minutes, I'm going to read the complete rules of order for governing board meetings, and if you wish to make a comment remotely, you should have already signed up on the Google form near the YouTube link. If you don't see the link to the Google form, you can refresh your YouTube live stream. That's very hard to say, YouTube live stream. If you're attending in person, this purple form, Request to Address the Governing Board, is available on the table at the back of the room. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and move on and ask you guys to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to very casually walk to the back of the room because I forgot to grab a written agenda. Oh. Nobody noticed. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the full rules of order for governing boards. The governing board welcomes public comment at its meetings by providing 2 opportunities for the public to address the board. If your topic of interest is not on the agenda, you may address the board during the public comment section at the beginning of the meeting, or if the topic is on the agenda, you may choose to speak just prior to the discussion of that agenda topic. In the event that there is a public hearing, the opportunity to speak is reopened. If you're joining remotely and wish to make public comment, you should have already submitted your Google form with the YouTube link. For those attending in person, please hand in a completed purple form, Request to Address the Governing Board, and hand it to Amy Sams, our board secretary. The information requested on the form is required for our meeting minutes. Speakers will be called on when it's their turn to address the board. If you're attending remotely, you may choose to enable your camera. As a reminder to remote attendees who wish to speak, please unmute your microphone when called upon. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to address the board. The sound of the buzzer indicates the end of your 2 minutes. In the event of a large number of speakers, the board may need to limit that time so they can conduct the business on this agenda. By law, the board cannot discuss, consider, or vote on topics that are not on the agenda. This assures the community that they're aware of the topics that will be discussed this evening. If you wish to discuss a topic through written communication, board members' contact information can be found on the district's website. We appreciate the community's attendance and comments at this meeting, and thank you for coming. So before we move on to public comments, I just want to draw attention to Carol Siegler, who is once again seated at our board table. Carol has thankfully been appointed to fill our opening on the governing board throughout the rest of this year. She has been appointed by the Pima County Superintendent of Schools. Carol applied for the position when the position became open, of course, due to the unfortunate and tragic passing of Amy Bola. She applied for the position. She filled out a pretty intensive questionnaire along with, 5 or 6 other candidates. All candidates were interviewed by the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and Carol was chosen as, I think, a really excellent choice to come and fill this chair for us through the end of December. And then, of course, whoever wins the election that's being held in early November will take on the rest of the 2-year term left behind by Amy Bola. I just want to say thank you to my hero, Carol Siegler. It wasn't too long ago, not quite 2 years, that we gave Carol a great send-off in this room, named the boardroom after her in response to her 26 years of stellar service on our governing board. And if you ever needed proof of the heroism and volunteerism and selflessness of Carol Siegler, this is it. Because here she is, and she's going to be completing almost another full year, making it 27 years. Carol saw a need. We made a request that she apply, and she never hesitated once. And I do know for a fact that since Carol has been off the board, she's been watching our minutes and reading our minutes. She's been to probably almost as many board meetings as, well, maybe not almost as many as a board member, but she's been to quite a few board meetings. And Carol, you may not know, has a granddaughter who's enrolled in our school district, and she's very, very active in the FFO at Ventana Vista Elementary. So Carol's ties to the school are strong. Carol's love for the school district has never wavered, and the proof is Carol's sitting in this seat tonight, and it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful to have you back at our table, Carol. Thank you so much for throwing your hat in the ring again.
Yes, thank you, and I am so sorry for the circumstances.
Yeah.
But as I've said to all of you, I love board work, and I'm delighted to be able to do this. I'm delighted to be able to do this. And I did an interview with Superintendent Williams, and he had nothing but glowing things to say about the district and our current superintendent and our future superintendent. So, and they did ask that I pass along their condolences. So,
Thank you. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see if Carol remembers how to do this. We are going to move on to public comments now.
Riding a bike.
Riding a bike, I'm sure. And we do have one speaker here in person, and I'm still looking at my online. I see no public comments online. I'm going to go ahead and call up Lindsay Fairbanks, one of our staff members, to speak about our Performance Award program.
Thank you guys for having me here again today. I'm just going to continue the statement that I started last week, even though I sent it to you guys, just to fully get that across. So this past May, when I was perusing the board minutes, I was shocked to see that the window of time for performance pay award for staff members, the number of days they can miss with students, is proposed to become more narrow, moving from about 130 to 162 face-to-face days. I struggle to see any situation other than FMLA, medical conditions, medical treatment, or bereavement that would cause a staff member to miss 10% of face-to-face time with students. And I question how taking an earned performance bonus from staff reflects our core values as a district. I urge you to consider the population of certified staff this is truly affecting. While the language of this policy is neutral, I truly believe the policy itself is poised to unintentionally affect those taking medical leave. I saw in the border that the policy will, quote, align with the current attendance expectations for students and improve the impact teachers make on student learning and academic achievement. I would ask the board to consider that just as students are given grace for medical conditions, and I have never seen a student unable to graduate or receive honors for absences due to medical leave, we also need to provide that grace and understanding for staff who require FMLA or need to take an approved leave of absence for other reasons. I'm not sure how other districts in the area handle this issue. I looked at Tucson and Amphi's policies, but they looked a little bit more vague in the documents I was able to find. They may have a similar attendance policy that I missed, but I'm not sure. However, my dearest hope is that our district can lead for a more nuanced and open policy so that staff who have done the work throughout the year can receive this bonus that does make a big impact in our lives. $3,000 doesn't seem like much maybe to the average person, but when you are a teacher, it can make a big difference in end-of-year expenses, especially through the summer, where some people do not get paid because of the payment plan they choose. Thank you for your time, and I truly appreciate all you guys do and that you've listened to me 2 times in a row now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move to our consent motion. Does anybody have anything that they wish to pull, comment, discuss on the consent agenda this evening?
Madam President, I probably should pull 3.2 since I
Your
was
minutes?
of the minutes, well, the executive session.
Executive session
I mean, I
minutes.
was here for the regular meeting.
Gotcha.
And I don't have a problem voting when I'm not here after I've read them and so forth, but the executive session.
Gotcha. Okay, so we will pull 3.2, Amy?
Yeah, I don't have anything to pull, but I did want to have a brief discussion about 3.7, the approval of the K-12 core and supplementary textbook materials.
Go ahead.
just to note that these materials are really mostly supplementary, just a few core materials, but, they have been on preview. I have looked at them personally. I went to our website. There's a feedback form, and I would ask Dr. Bartlett if she's able to provide information about whether any feedback forms have been submitted, or whether the district has received any comments on these materials.
Yes, thank you. Cheryl Castro's here to give you some of that information. I've asked her to report on that tonight.
So you're right, there is only one core resource. All of the rest are supplementary resources. There were 363 views or clicks. We don't know if they actually viewed, but clicks on the page this time. There were no inquiries from me. Well, and I was going to say about 30 of those were me.
And me.
And me.
There were no inquiries from the community. No one came to MAC to review the resources that we have on display. There were no changes made to any of the resources on the list at all.
Great, thank you.
And so then, this is advertised in the border that preview is out there. How else is it advertised to our parents that preview is
It's
out
on the
there?
website in 2 pages. It's on the board page at the very bottom, right above where the agendas are. I just took it off today because the preview ended on
It's over.
It's over. And then on the academics page, it's at the very bottom of curriculum and revision resources. And then through the sites too. There's a posting in all the sites and all of their newsletters through the entire.
By sites, you mean the schools?
School sites.
Okay, so it's in the newsletters at
Newsletter
all
for
of
the
the schools.
entire preview period.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. So ample opportunity to review these resources. Okay, thank you. Anything else on the agenda, consent agenda, that needs to be discussed or pulled? If not, I would entertain a motion for this consent agenda.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.1, the governing board May 28th, 2024 regular meeting minutes as presented, 3.3, the expense voucher memorandum as presented, 3.4, the field trip request memorandum as presented, 3.5, the fundraising request memorandum as presented, 3.6, the personnel memorandum as presented, 3.7, the K-12 core and supplementary textbook and resources as presented, and 3.8, the intergovernmental agreement between Catalina Foothills School District and Pima County Joint Technical Education District as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? We've got a motion and a second for the consent agenda items listed by Amy Kraus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, we'll bring up item 3.2, which is the executive session governing board meeting minutes memorandum. And again, to reiterate, Carol was not at the executive session, so we'll just have a separate vote on this, and we would be, I assume, ready for a motion on that as well?
I move that the governing board approve the governing board May 28th, 2024 executive session meeting minutes as presented.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
What do you do?
I think you just say abstain.
Abstain?
Okay, so motion carries 3-1-0, something
No,
like
three,
that.
zero.
3-0-1.
3-0-1, that's how we do it. Okay, sorry. We've never really had to do that very often.
Very much.
Okay. Moving right along to our unfinished business, section 4 of our agenda. Our first up is 4.1, approval of revisions to CFSD Performance Award Plan. This is a third reading, an action item, we hope, and Dr. Bartlett, Associate Superintendent, for a couple more weeks, will present.
I'm still staying here for a couple more weeks. So we are recommending only one minor change to the performance award plan, and after the second reading, it was asked to be brought back for a third reading. And we did some rethinking on the plan. The current eligibility for the performance award is that you have to teach a minimum of 135 whole student days, okay? And we were proposing to change that to 162 for the 90%. So it's a 90% of the contract student days. But after further discussion and consideration, we're going to recommend the following additional change to the qualifying requirements. So only eligible employees who teach a minimum of 90% of the whole instructional days during the school year may earn the full award. But employees who teach less than 90% of the instructional days, or 62 whole days, are eligible for a portion of the performance award that is prorated for the number of whole days taught. So this still maintains the same expectations for our students and our teachers, but it allows for employees who do have extended absences to be eligible for a partial award. Now, there is still this stipulation about the professional learning, so you do have to meet both of those. You have to,
Correct.
So if you don't meet the professional learning component, then you're not eligible for any portion of it. However, if you're at least, that you're going to be prorated for the days that the whole student days that the teacher taught. So that's the change after discussion and consideration.
And that also eliminates the floor, right? I mean, there's no minimum, right?
Right, there's no
So-
minimum.
But they have to be under contract at the end of the year.
Yes, they do have to be
Yes.
under contract at the end of the year.
Right. So it actually covers,
Everybody.
previously, there was a minimum of 100 and,
Well, previously it was all or nothing.
right.
Right.
You either got the award or you didn't get the award. Now you can get partial award.
So I think what Amy's saying, though, is you had to have at least 135 days in the bucket in order to get the award. Now, even that would be gone.
Correct.
If somebody only worked 50 days, granted, it would be a very small prorated amount.
It would.
And that is our intention, that
That
we
is
would
the
prorate
intention.
all the way down rather than have a floor.
Yes. Now, well, the other thing that will cause is we will not be able to pay it at the first. We typically pay the performance award at the first pay period in June. Because we're going to have to wait all the way till the end of the school year to determine how many days the teacher taught, we're going to push that back to the second pay in June because we have to. It's going to be a complicated spreadsheet.
Sure, sure.
So, but
Yes.
yes.
Business office.
Well, no, I do that.
Or you do that?
I do
She's the
that.
spreadsheet
Oh, thank goodness for
queen,
you.
I do that, and so I will get that ready for
the business office.
Miss Westover before she comes in. I'll get that
That's
spreadsheet.
nice of you.
Yeah, I know.
And so you actually had the thought process to go, because I hadn't thought of that, that the floor is completely gone. And we want to design it that way.
I think so. Well, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes this next year, and we reevaluate this plan every year.
Right.
So if it's not getting us, if it's not serving us, then we will relook at that.
Because it would seem to me that a floor should have could be a good possibility.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like 90 days, or I'm just,
Whatever
I'm
the
not
bottom-
saying
whatever the
90
number
days.
is, I don't know
I'm not
what the
saying
number
that.
is,
I'm
but
just saying
whatever the
like
number
something
is.
100 days.
or 100 days or something.
Yeah.
you like the idea of a floor as well. But what
See how
you're
this
saying
goes.
is you want to test the waters with this, and we can always come back and put a floor in next year.
Yep.
Okay, because you do realize that if we do it this
I
way
do.
and we go and put in a floor next year, we will be taking something away that right now they don't necessarily have. The 135 days is there. So I'm wondering what everyone's thought process is about
I
that.
love the idea of a fourth
Oh, so do I.
week. It's the dog days of summer. That's 2 more weeks. Question on the proration. So let's say I miss, so 162 is full. Let's say I miss 16 days, so 10% of that. So I come in at maybe 146, right? So would I then earn, is it exactly linear? Would I then
Yeah.
earn 90% of that? Okay, so got it.
Yes, and then it's also, because the plan has many components,
Yeah.
part of it is on their TAP evaluation, part of it is on their data.
Yeah.
So we have schools that are not earning 100% of the
Sure.
award now.
That's
Um,
So then they would be getting
This is their
90% of
starting
the,
point.
whatever that is.
of-
The
Yes.
attendance
Oh.
identifies their starting point. Is that correct? That would be the
No.
maximum that they could get,
the
assuming they meet
attendance,
everything else.
the attendance is the last thing that would be calculated because we calculate what is the award
Okay.
and the
then
school earns
prorate it.
90% of that.
Mm-hmm.
And their evaluation earns them 90% of that, 90% of these pieces, and
In the
then
attendance,
afterwards,
okay.
then you do the
The
attendance.
individual attendance. Okay. Floor? You brought it up initially, so.
I did.
And I hadn't thought of it.
I
so.
did. That was like one of the first things that I thought of. But then I think if in theory, this slice of the performance award, if we are making a connection between impact and and teachers in the classroom, and I think that's something we
Yes.
all accept as
Yes.
a general premise, then it makes sense that when teachers are there teaching, they should be recognized for that work. So I'm not opposed to no floor. I think I'm okay with that because it makes sense to me. I hope it turns out like that in practice. But I also think it's important to remember that the performance award, so teachers are paid their contract. This
Correct.
is not taking away anything from a
their
contract. So
salary.
this is, and we want them to get it. I mean, we always
Absolutely.
want to,
Right, of
any
course.
opportunity to get, for teachers to earn more money, we're all in on that. So that's also why I kind of like that idea. Because it does reward and recognize the impact of teachers when they
In the
practice their
classroom.
profession.
Mhm.
Which we've always upheld that teaching as a profession.
This was a sticky issue. Clearly,
Yeah.
we're on our third reading, so I'm not sure who came up with this proration, but I'm a big fan of it.
I was up a few nights and thinking about that, so yes.
None of us. Makes a lot of sense.
Any thoughts, Carol?
Well, I agree a lot with Amy. As I thought through it, I hadn't thought about a floor, and I read it and I reread it because of what it was and then what it was now going to be. And I just know in my own situation with my granddaughter in school, when teachers are out if they're ill, but you understand that. And in-service or teacher professional training is so important and so vital, and yet it sure does affect the child in the classroom that day. When, we didn't have our spelling test today because they were doing professional development. I'm not opposed to that. This is not an opposition to doing professional development.
And professional
And I know
development
it
does
doesn't-
not count.
Doesn't count.
It doesn't
towards
count, but
this.
she's saying,
I know it doesn't count, but it's just how very important it is
Yeah.
for the teacher to be in the classroom.
and when they can't, they can't.
And when
there's-
they can't, they can't. So, and I know it doesn't, but I'm good with this. I'm good with this. I'm good without the floor. I really am.
The other piece is
we
that
do want to.
this is a year to year. So if someone doesn't earn the full
The
award
full.
one year, the next year they
They have the opportunity
they
to
have
do
the
that next
opportunity
year.
to earn the full award.
And our history has very much been, I mean, from the very first day Dr. Camerzell got here, how do we pay teachers
Yep.
more? How do we find ways? And these, quote, buckets of money came in. So I'm all in with that.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions or comments on the new proposal? I'm thinking that we're probably not needing to go to a fourth reading.
Sounds like I know. Close.
Wow.
I don't know if we've
Okay.
ever done a fourth reading on something.
I'm not sure.
In my tenure.
I'm not sure.
Don't even say that.
I shouldn't jinx it.
All right. If people are feeling satisfied with the discussion thus far, is anyone ready to make a motion?
I move the governing board approve the revisions to CFSD Performance Award Plan as presented.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to approve the performance award plan as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And I just want to tack on a thank you to you for speaking 2 weeks ago, speaking again today, and causing us to think about this a little bit more. We do appreciate that, and this is the way it's all supposed to work. So,
Better solution than I could have imagined.
yeah, yeah. Great. Well, thank you.
Thank
I
you for all you
appreciate it.
do.
Yes. All right, we will move on then to item 4.2, which is approval of revisions to policy and regulation JL-R, student wellness. This is a second reading and an action item. Dr. Bartlett.
Yes, so the primary reason for bringing this to the board is that there's no language in the final rule from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Services that requires a yearly meeting. So we're removing that from the policy. Then, of course, we also needed to revise some of the sentences in the policy so that we can actually change the adoption date to June 11th. So that's in there as well. I think there was a question at the last meeting about the triennial assessment, and that was conducted in the 22-23 school year, and the next one is scheduled for 25-26. That policy, along with the results of the triennial assessment, are found at the website, on our website under lunch menus, and we will send out annual notification directing parents to that website for that report.
Great. Thank you. Any comments, suggestions, concerns regarding the student wellness policy and its attending regulation? No changes from anything that was presented 2 weeks
No
ago?
changes.
This one that had all the weird spacing.
Yeah,
Looks like it's all been
it
fixed.
looks like
Yes,
it's been
we fixed all of the spacing.
I'm really good at the minutia.
you're good at so many things, Amy, including the minutia.
Well, it's important.
Well, I
When
saw
people-
it too. I brought it up too.
I know.
Well, when people
You're
look at
not the
this
only
online-
one
We're gonna
who
talk
likes
about
minutia.
semicolons and colons in the next one, Eileen?
Sure. Sure. If there's no further conversation, discussion, or questions, is someone ready for a motion on this one?
I move the governing board approve policy JL and regulation JL-R, student wellness as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, and we will now move on to 4.3, review of the fiscal year 2025 maintenance and operations straw budget and approval of the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget, the state forms. This will be an action item this evening. Our Director of Finance, Lisa Tatel, is at the podium ready to present.
Good evening. I'm going to update you on the straw budget and then move on to the 2025 proposed budget. I do feel like this is a little bit of deja vu because we are dealing with a similar situation that occurred 2 years ago for the fiscal year 23 budget. On the 2025 revenue budget, line 1, base revenue control limit decreased by $648,000 due to the utilization of the 2024 base level amount since the state has not yet passed the budget. Line 4 increased by nearly $25,000. To ensure the district budgets to the full capacity, we utilized the budget assumptions to calculate the M&O override as if the state had passed the budget with the 2% inflationary increase. When setting the tax rates, the county utilizes the M&O override dollar figure from the adopted budget. Line 8, DAA transfer to M&O increased by $628,000. The second revenue budget, entitled Alternative Scenario, reflects the anticipated revenue budget after the state's budget is passed. Line 1, base revenue control limit would increase by $648,000, utilizing the base level amount of $5,013 per weighted student count. Line 4, M&O override remains unchanged. And line 8, DAA transfer to M&O would decrease from $2.5 million to $1.8 million.
Lucy, can you stop for a minute? Are you on the straw budget? Or
Yeah, the straw
Yeah,
budget.
still the straw budget.
Here's the second.
Okay,
There we are.
So
thank you.
for the classroom site fund report, line 9C under the 2024 deletions column was modified to reflect actual fixed cost expenditures incurred as a result of the performance pay. And then the carry forward was then adjusted on line 3B under the 2025 additions column.
So Lisa, if I can just stop you right there, and I thought I might just try to summarize what we just went through there to make sure that I'm on the correct page. But because the state has not passed their budget yet, we don't want to assume in our the budget that we're going to approve tonight, that the 2% is going to happen, even though it's statutorily required. They've done it before where they have not given us the 2%, so we don't want to assume. So that's what budget number 1 here on the first page of our straw budget is.
So
And so that's why the revenue control limit decreased from the last presentation.
yeah, it's not that we can't assume it, it's that the state forms don't actually have that rate on
State
there.
norms won't let us put it in there.
Yeah, so
Gotcha,
I physically can't
do it.
do it.
But they will let you budget for the M&O override at the higher level.
because I can actually plug that number into
Okay.
our forms.
And the reason we do that is so that when we're setting our tax rate, we're setting our tax rate to include this. If we don't include this in our adopted budget, we'll lose out on being able to set the tax rate for that dollar amount.
Yeah, after-
So that's why it's in there.
You cannot increase your M&O override after the adopted budget. You can only decrease it.
Gotcha. And then the change in the DAA transfer is simply a balancing figure. We have less revenue, so we're gonna have to transfer more from our capital funds to balance the budget.
Yes.
Because of course, we've already sent out all of our notifications of salary increases to our teachers and our staff. And so that's our plug figure. So then the second one assumes the 2% increase. And everything kind of gets reversed there. The revenue control limit goes back up. The M&O override stays the same because we built that in already. And the transfer from DAA to M&O decreases because we no longer need that plug figure.
Yeah, the alternative scenario is what we've been using all along.
Right. It brings us back to where we were 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
With maybe probably a couple of little changes here and there. So I do understand that correctly then. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Wow,
Good, good.
thank you,
summary.
Eileen.
Yes, it's impressive.
You know.
That was impressive.
Well, it has happened to us before, and it does make your job really very difficult because you're running 2 budgets.
Yeah.
And it would really be nice if you didn't have to do that, and if by June 11th, the state legislature might have a budget for us. I did read something that they were going to present something to the whole body, some preliminary budget figure, or budget scheme.
Yes.
Today, I think I heard that this morning on NPR. So maybe they'll have something soon. Oh, and then this all will end up getting corrected, assuming the 2% goes in. This will all get corrected in our first budget revision in the fall.
Yeah, probably in July.
We'll do it in July. Okay. Okay, thank you.
It'll have to be a special meeting.
Oh, good.
We usually have 1 or 2 of those in the summer.
Welcome
Yes.
back, Carol.
Okay, thank you for letting me interrupt.
So I was going to move on to the proposed expenditure budget forms unless there's any other questions. On page 1 of 2 of the data entry sheets, the base level amount remains at $4,914.71 due to the state not yet passing the budget. The transportation revenue control limit remains at 1.16 million, which is stated on page 3 of 5 of the BSA 55 report. I wanted to note that correction from the memo.
Oh, so it's the 5-page report?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. 3 of 5.
Yes.
Got it, thank you.
DAA current year funding decreased by $74,000 due to a decrease in ADM from 2023 to 2024. DAA funding is based on the prior year's ADM, and this information is stated on page 4 of 5 of the BSA report. I also wanted to note that reference correction. On the cover sheet, the M&O budget limit is increasing by approximately $1 million from the 2024 final budget revision, primarily due to the current year DAA transfer to M&O. DAA is budgeted at $7.98 million. Of that amount, $4.7 million is capital override managed by Cheryl Castro. The remaining amount includes carry forward from 2024 plus new year funding less the transfer to M&O. Classroom site fund increased from $758 to $792 per weighted student count, which includes JTED. On the expenditure report, which is on page 3 of 8, we budget to capacity. On the classroom site budget, straw budget, we expend to cash available. And as stated on the revenue straw budget, we are transferring $2.5 million of DAA to M&O, which is stated on page 7 of 8 on the proposed budget forms. The total revenue on page 7 of 8 is $20,000 higher than the revenue straw budget to account for budgeted tuition revenue to be received. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. I have a question about the reduction in the K-3 reading program expenses because of the decrease in Title I funding, but obviously we still have a need. So where's that student support coming from?
M&O, we'll be taking it
Okay.
from M&O. Whatever we have a shortfall, we'll be using Move On When Reading funds combined with Title I funds, and then any shortfall will come out of M&O.
Okay. Thank you.
Doug? I always have one thing I like to point out every year. I'm a little pedantic about it, but our budget costs for transportation are almost $2.1 million, and our funding for transportation is $1.1 million. And that funding hasn't changed in never. So there's no recognition of increasing gas prices, there's no recognition for growth or cost of buses or maintenance. It's just 1.1 million, and our costs continue to rise. And of course, that comes out of M&O as well, which is money that we would really rather spend on our teachers. So call your legislators.
That's the transportation control
That's the
revenue.
transportation
Revenue
control
control
limit. Yep.
And that's not part of the capital
No.
mitigation that's happening.
No.
That's not buying
No.
buses or anything.
No.
That's not- The 2.1 million is not buses or.
No, that's just
No,
the
that's
cost
just
of
running
transporting our
the
students.
transportation program.
Yeah, so we don't get to tack on a extra gas
Well, thank goodness
surcharge
we
like
don't.
every other vendor,
We have
you
no-
know, does for their,
Yes.
Do not.
no,
We do not.
wow.
The bonds, I should say.
Well, the bonds
Sorry.
that
I
we've
said it- I
replaced our
said it
buses,
wrong.
we've
Yes.
we're
That's
very
what we use to
fortunate.
actually buy the buses.
That's
but
correct.
not to
Otherwise, that would be
operate the
coming
buses.
out of.
Yeah.
We used some ESSER money for buses too, didn't we?
No,
I don't
we
think
were
we
not
were
able to
use
do
it.
that.
We did first.
There was a plan that we wanted to, but
Never had.
it wouldn't.
I was so excited. That's something we gotta deal with.
Other questions for Lisa? Any comments? More discussion?
Now, this won't change between now and the next meeting, is that correct? Or is this?
Well, this is the action item, so we're going
Right.
to approve this.
Right.
And then when the budget forms come available,
Yeah, in 2 weeks, we'll adopt the budget, and
We'll
there are
adopt
no
We
changes.
will adopt this budget.
This
Correct.
budget, we can't change it. If
Right.
we find out, we find out anything from the state, we still can't change this.
That's correct.
Right.
correct.
Which is why we do a budget revision as soon as
Right.
the school year turns over. We'll do a
Right.
budget revision in July and have a special meeting. At which I assume we'll hire some people too, so.
Yes.
All right, well, this is an action item, folks. If anyone is interested in offering up a motion,
I move that the governing board approve the fiscal year 2025 proposed expenditure budget as presented.
we have a motion. Is there a second to approve the expenditure budget?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for all your hard work on
Thank
this.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, this
Actually,
is,
thank you for what you're going to have to do.
Exactly, you're gonna get to do
Past
this
work,
all over again.
Future work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Aye.
moving right along. We're gonna enter our new business section of the meeting, section 5, starting with 5.1, which will be consideration of revisions to policy GCBA, professional staff salary schedules. This is a first reading. Dr. Bartlett.
Yes, so originally, we were bringing forward this policy just to address the substitute changes, but of course, there's one minor change. that I identified in the fourth paragraph. We took out the word public before school to indicate that years of experience does not have to be in a public school. That just matches our practice. We give them credit for working in a private school or a charter school. It doesn't have to be public school. So we're going to remove that word. Then on page 142 of the policy, we've added language. So we're going to be, we're proposing to change the pay structure, which we will be bringing the pay structure forward at the next meeting. The way we're going to be paying our substitutes for certified versus classified positions. So currently, we hire substitutes for 2 classes of classified positions: the district receptionist and inclusion educational assistants. So those are the only classified employees who get a substitute. So we're adding this language in on page 142 at the top, where it says substitutes are obtained for filling absences for certified teachers, classified inclusion educational assistant, and the district receptionist. That was never included in the policy before, so we're adding that. The next paragraph, positions are determined to be certified teaching positions or classified teaching positions, so there's going to be that distinction. Certified positions are those that are responsible for filling a vacancy for a certified teacher. Classified positions are those that are responsible for filling a vacancy for a classified employee. So then in the next part, the compensation paid to substitutes for certified teachers is going to be based on the following conditions. Each full day of substitute service for the district, the service up to 20 days. We had changed that to 15 and then 10. We're going to recommend changing that back to 20 days of service for the higher rate, because that's what all of our surrounding districts are doing as well. We were the only ones that were at 15 and then 10. So the service up to 20 full days, 2 half days will be considered 1 day, and then service of more than 20 days. So at 20 day, up from day 1 to 20, they receive 1 rate, and any day after, from 21 on, they'll receive a higher rate. It doesn't have to be consecutive either. Some districts make that consecutive. We do not make that.
Know that?
Yes.
So they accumulate it throughout the year.
Yes.
Okay.
So once it's to promote, accepting
wanting to
jobs.
come to come
in the
here,
district.
not to
Loyalty.
well.
Yes, some
Absolutely.
loyalty.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Long-term substitute service is defined as a substitute of more than 15 consecutive school days in the same position. And we have changed that a few years ago, that it starts on day 1, that the long-term rate starts on day 1 when it's a known position.
We know it's going to take, we know it's going to be a long-term
That's
placement.
changed. It used to be that it had to start on day 16.
Right.
So that's been a change several years ago. The new part here is also the compensation paid for substitutes for classified positions is going to be based on the following factors. Each hour of classified substitute service for the district based on the FTE of the absent employee. So if a inclusion educational assistant is assigned for 5 hours a day, the substitute will be hired for 5 hours a day.
How did it used to be?
4 or 8.
Oh.
And you couldn't
Yes.
pay them for 4 if they were 5 hour a day.
Correct. So they could only choose either
I
a
see.
half day or a full day.
I thought that was driven, though, by the substitute agency, not us.
No, that's us.
That's us. Okay. So we can then we're going to pay them an hourly rate for the number of hours that
Yes.
the person they're substituting for was scheduled to work.
Correct.
Okay.
And they're going to be paid at step 1 of the range for classified employees' positions. So it's either going to be range 22 for the receptionist or range 30 for an inclusion educational assistant. So we're recommending that. And then we're recommending removing the language set forth by our substitute daily rate of pay, because it's not going to be a daily rate, it's going to be an hourly rate. So that language will be removed. And then, of course, at the end, the date of the adoption will be changed as well. So it is a change from our current system of substitute. But the position of filling for a classified employee is much different than assuming classroom responsibilities for 6 periods a day. So
Yeah.
differentiating, and we have been the only district that has been paying a daily rate for our classified employees. Most other districts around, I did a study on that, they have been paying an hourly rate. Also, what this will do, and we will look at this will pretty much ensure that our classified substitutes will be getting an increase annually.
If they get hired.
Well, no, because if we change our wage schedule like we do typically,
Oh, I see what you're
And they
saying.
get the
they're
benefit
going
of
to
that.
get, they're gonna get that benefit.
And we don't have to keep going back and changing. our-
Correct,
Right.
correct. So there are some nuances to this that will be advantageous.
Absolutely.
What precipitated you taking a look at this policy?
Well, our substitute expenditures are very,
Which are
very high.
Very high.
And just the job responsibilities between a certified and a classified position. And paying them the same amount didn't seem equitable.
That makes sense.
So that's why we looked.
Are you concerned, I mean, are you concerned that we're going to discourage classified substitutes?
Well, we're also hoping that this will encourage them to become employees.
Right.
Right.
I'd like to encourage them to be, because it's going to be more advantageous to be an employee for us. Because we've had, you've seen the vacancies that we've had for
Yes.
special education, educational assistants. And
Yes.
when we don't fill those, we have to get the substitutes, and that's what's driven up our costs as well. So it's all embroiled together.
It really sounds like a win-win.
I think so.
And it's a fair policy, but it's going to incent the right things, I think, for us.
Correct. And so at the June 25th is when we'll bring the increases that we're proposing as well. So that'll go for the substitute daily rate as well as the hourly rate for the classified.
Got it.
Do you mean to eliminate the word public in front of school?
I did. I forgot to, I
Okay.
mentioned it, but I
Oh,
forgot to
yeah,
put
it's
it
not
on
in
here.
it.
I
It's
will
still
put
not-
that on
Okay,
here for
just
the
so you
next
know.
one.
That's the only place I saw it.
Yes, that's the only place. I forgot to cross it out,
Okay,
but I put it on my memo.
okay.
Okay.
You're not gonna leave that substitute heading at the bottom of that page, right? Because that'll drive me insane.
The widows and orphans, isn't that what you
Well-
refer to them as?
What page?
When it gets,
What page are you on?
when it gets
Oh.
uploaded to the
It doesn't align
the
that way?
policy bridge,
It all
Okay.
changes anyway.
it'll all change
Okay.
anyway, so.
Okay, I'm not
but
gonna
for the
focus
next
on it.
reading, I will make sure I don't have that like that.
It's okay.
Did you have some concerns about semicolons and colons in here?
Was it in this one? I don't think it
I'm
was
just
in this
joking.
one.
Just joking.
No,
I'm
not
sure
in this
you
one.
have notes on if it's
do.
applying to one of these things. Okay.
No, not in this one.
Well, this again is a first reading, so it will come back to us in a couple of weeks. We will review and hopefully have an approval for that. All right, so we'll move on then to item 5.2, which is the cover memorandum, consideration of revisions to policy IHA, Basic Instructional Program. This is a first reading, and our Executive Director of Curriculum and Assessment, Cheryl Castro, will present.
Thank you. So yes, presented for your consideration are the revisions to policy IHA Basic Instructional Program, and you'll see that the language in items A, C, E, F, and G was updated to align with current basic instructional program requirements. Most of the changes, if you take a look at A, and we'll move down the list, were deletions of phrases that seem to be a bit redundant. I think they did this for clarity's sake in most cases. So you'll see under A that they removed that whole list of reading, spelling, handwriting, the things that make up ELA, probably because they are not the only things that are in ELA, and it would be the list would be too long to have it. So you'll see the same thing happened in C, but C was where we see the most changes. The good news for C before we start is before they even gave us this policy update, CFSD's program, instructional program, either exceeds or meets all of these requirements already. So there was nothing that we had to change in the classroom in order to comply with any of these policy changes. So you'll see under C that we have number 1, civics, which we teach. Number 2 is actually a policy that Denise talked to me about. The policy that we have currently in place did not require us to talk about the number of days of instruction about the Holocaust and other genocides, but we're getting ahead of a policy that's going to be in place early in the fall. So we know it's coming, so we're just
Okay.
putting it in place now.
Okay.
We're also putting it in place in writing now because we already do it.
Right.
And so that's the one about instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides, at least 3 school days or the equivalent, at least once in grades 7 through 8 and once in grades 9 through 12. In CFSD, we teach these subjects in grades 7 and 9. So that's already taken care of. And then in number 3, we already do this as well, instruction in the constitutions of the United States and Arizona, American institutions and ideals, and in the history of Arizona, including the history of Native Americans in Arizona, at least once in grades K through 8. We do it much more often than once in grades K through 8, and in grades 9 through 12, respectively. And so in our courses at the high school, for example, U.S. history, U.S. Gov, law and justice, these topics are brought up time and again. And so we've already met the requirement for Part C. You'll see that under letter E, we changed that to visual and or performing arts simply because that's how we know these courses. So for clarity's sake, that's how we've listed E. We removed F according to what was listed in the policy manual because technology skills are embedded in all courses that we teach. They're not really they're not a component of the instructional program. And then letter F, the policy added the word health before physical education due to ARS 15-701.03. Health, including mental health, instruction can be included as part of any other subject areas and shall comply with statute, which we already do in our PE classes, health and PE. And in item G, this is the one where the state completely removed, I have a hard time with this one being a former world languages teacher. They completely removed the requirement for world languages, which they still call foreign languages, but we of course still offer it, and so we changed it to say
Interesting.
world languages.
I didn't realize they'd done that. Wow.
Well, you know.
That's particularly odd since most four-year institutions of higher learning require world language.
Yeah, when I read the policy, I expected to see them just changing the name foreign language to world languages finally, to get rid of that exclusionary phrase and make it more inclusive and representative of how we teach world languages today. But those were the changes for those particular
Where did these changes, where did that come from? The state
policy
board?
manual.
From the state board?
Yes,
Yeah.
and statute.
And statute,
And
okay.
statute.
Well, the statute was for Part C, is where, well, actually for Part F as well. C and F for the statute. The rest, I think, were just policy changes for clarity. And then we did add one change, and I noticed just now that I forgot to underline that. I'm sorry, it's harder to see that way. Under observance days, we changed the phrase, or we added the phrase that receives federal funds for a fiscal year to the paragraph about Constitution Day, because we'd had inquiries from staff members in the past wondering why we dedicate this time if it's not listed as an Arizona state holiday. Well, it's a federal holiday, and so we do observe it because of that. So those were the only changes to that policy.
I have a question, just as a matter of practicality, just out of curiosity. If a student moves from Arizona to here in 12th, you're both laughing, you know what I'm gonna
I
ask.
know exactly what you're gonna.
If they come in 12th grade, then how do they get their 3 days of Holocaust education? Like, do you stick them in a
That's a good
class
question.
for? I mean,
There's
how do you ensure that a new student gets this?
There's a line in the, that I can remember, it's in the course handbook too, when transfer students come in, their transcripts are evaluated. Because if you have a 12th grader come in, you can't keep him for an extra 3 years to do everything
No.
that we want. So they evaluate the transcript and then they set up his schedule for that year to make sure he gets everything that he needs. And some students do have, if they want a CFSD diploma, CFHS diploma, they have to have world languages, for example. And so they make a plan to make sure that if they don't come in with any world languages, they come in with a way to help the student get that requirement. Perhaps it's going to happen after they graduate, but it will happen. But we can't go back and retroactively require them to do everything that the state of Arizona requires them to do if they're coming from another place. So the transcript is evaluated, and there's a line in the handbook that says the principal shall review the transcript to determine which courses, in conjunction with the counselors, to decide which courses are deficiencies, which ones match up with what they've taken in Illinois or
Yeah.
Nevada or wherever they're coming from.
Or like the citizenship test that's required in Arizona. You know, if they've come from Illinois, you have to take that.
Yeah, the citizenship test, they're gonna have to take that, yeah.
It's an assessment thing.
But everybody who takes it passes it, because they get multiple chances. They can have as many chances as they want to pass it. They have all the answers online, so they can practice it. Most of our kids all pass it. We don't have to worry
And
about
that's not
that.
an Arizona test, that's a federal test,
Right,
is it
so,
not? It's a
yeah.
civic
Federal test, but the
yeah.
requirement
But
that
they require the
Arizona
state
students,
to do it
yeah.
here, yeah,
Was
right. Additional comments or questions on the graduation requirements, basic instructional program? Oh, actually, I jumped the gun on graduation requirements. We're still on basic instructional programs. All right.
Did you say graduation?
I did, because I had had
I
that
didn't even
policy
hear that.
pulled up as well.
Sorry.
It's similar.
Back to it.
Yeah, we're still on 5.2, which is the basic instructional program. All right, well, if there's no further commentary or questions for Cheryl, we're going to move right on and continue with Cheryl Castro for item 5.3, which is consideration of revisions to policy IKF, graduation requirements, first reading.
Well, because of the changes in policy IHA, obviously there are some changes to the graduation requirements in policy IKF, and so the language was added on page 2. So I direct your attention to almost about 3/4 of the way down on page 2. We specify the instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides for at least 3 school days or the equivalent, at least once in grades 9 through 12, since this is for graduation. We didn't include the grades 7 through 9. And then also the instruction in state and federal constitutions, American institutions and ideal, and in the history of Arizona, including the history of Native Americans in Arizona at least once in grades 9 through 12 as required by statute. That was the only change that was made to the graduation requirements.
Oh, I have that's it. Okay, I have a question. Do we need to leave in the social studies credit requirements for graduation class for 20?
You know, I asked that
24?
of my wonderful mentor, Mary Jo, and I think we need to keep it in for now, and then once
Okay.
all of the classes have run through and we get to the class where the new courses are underway, then we can take them out.
So for historical reference
For
kind
just
of
now, and
thing.
then probably next year I'll be coming before you and we'll be removing that.
We can get rid of a page and a half of the policy.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I saw that and I thought,
Yeah, until they graduate, probably. So those kids go through.
I mean, but you could, because this
Yeah,
is
but
2024,
23.
this is 2023, those
We
could
don't need
they
23.
could conceivably come out.
and we don't really need 24 because they've already graduated,
Right.
except that this is that
It's showing the progression.
rolling change.
yeah, it's part
that
of a
progression.
sequence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
showing the
sequence.
progression.
I mean, we could
so-
take it out if you think we need to
Well,
take
but
it
we
out,
also
but-
have students who haven't graduated,
right, so.
Oh.
you know.
Oh,
I would say
So
since
if
it
we
doesn't
have
hurt, I
students
would
that are
keep it
still
in.
working on some of those graduation requirements, I think we should leave them
it
in.
doesn't harm anything to
I'm
leave
not
it in.
pushing to take it out, I just thought,
We still have kids that are going to be working towards some of those graduation requirements.
All right, this one will come back in a couple of weeks for our final consideration.
you know, it's amazing, it seems like, excuse me, but it seems like every year there's something to change.
always
with the
something to change.
graduation requirements, it's, I mean,
Yep.
it's,
It's that state legislature. They like to tinker with all the
There's always
education
something to tweak.
statutes.
All right. Item 5.4, consideration of revised academic standards for science, grades K through 5 for 2024-2025. This is a first reading. This will be Cheryl Castro and Leah Glashow Mandel, our Director of Professional Learning.
Welcome.
So we are delighted to present for your consideration these revisions to the elementary science standards. Let me tell you why. Our teachers and principals have expressed concern over the years about the way that our science standards do not align with our core resource, Inspire Science. And we're going to talk to you about the ramifications of that. So we'd like you to consider these revisions. You've already approved these standards. We haven't changed any of the standards. They are the exact same standards, the exact same wording. They're simply moved among the grade levels in a different way. So it's the same standards that you approved previously. So before, when teachers expressed that the mismatch between the alignment of the standards and the grade levels at which they taught with our resources, I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say that you were a grade 1 teacher. You would have to pull from Inspire Science resources from kindergarten, resources from first grade, from second grade, and from third grade. And you're not pulling full units, you're pulling lessons from each one of those grade levels as a first grade teacher that span kindergarten through, what did I say, third grade. This becomes problematic. It's not impossible to do, it's just that it's pretty inefficient. And so when we were listening to the teachers, we decided to contact ADE because they work for us. Is what they always tell us when we call. When I call and I say, sorry to bother you, they say, we work for you, Cheryl. And I said, that's great. And so they were very helpful. We talked to the director of science and STEM at ADE, Sarah Sleesman, and we explained the problem to her. We asked how other districts are handling this. We went into a long explanation of everything that's happening and the ramifications, the amount of class time that it's taken, the logistical issues of having to share different resources among 4 or 5 grade levels, the problems with having to create new resources because how are you going to take a 5th grade resource and just give it to a kindergartner? You can't. You have to either adapt it or more likely you're just going to create something brand new on your own. And so she said, she was a little perplexed, and she said, well, Cheryl, you don't have to teach the standards in order. As long as you address all of the standards before 5th grade or by 5th grade, when students leave elementary school, you can teach them in any order you wish. And so if a certain set of standards appear at grade 1 in your Inspire Science textbook, then you can teach those standards then, it's fine. And so ADE has no problem at all with us moving the standards between the grade levels, even though now they don't exactly match 1 for 1 with the state standards as written for science, for K-5 science.
Is that in writing?
Yes, I have it in an email.
Information that would have been useful 4 years ago.
No kidding.
But you know, it was 2020 when all this happened. It was the pandemic. There were other things going on, right? Everything was hard back
That was
then.
my question. How did we get here?
Yeah, it was 2020.
Blame
It
it on
was
COVID.
June of
All right,
2020.
all right.
And so people were just moving forward.
Sure.
Just moving forward. So what we've done is to realign all of the standards based on how they appear in the Inspire Science textbooks and resources. And we know that this is going to increase teachers' efficiency as they implement and assess the program. And it's also going to support the consistent use of our classroom resources, because when teachers can't find resources easily, they don't use them. They just spend their time creating something new. We don't want that to happen. We want teachers to be able to be efficient in this. And so when we presented this idea to the principals, they were on board. And when they presented it to their teachers, the teachers were overwhelmingly positive about this, even though they knew that this is going to require some work on their part. Because anytime we have a transition, anytime we have a change, there are ramifications at the site level and also at the classroom level. So to begin with, I met with the principals and we talked about the library clerks. The library clerks had to have time and resources to realign all of their science closets in a new way. So different sites do it different ways. Some of them have closets for different grade levels, some have tubs and bins. They had to take all of the materials out and put them in the proper bins for the proper classrooms. The other work that needed to be done, I'm going to sit down here and ask my colleague Leah to talk about how we wanted to make sure that this was the lightest lift possible for teachers. And so Leah and Kevin did a lot of the groundwork up front to make sure that it would be, and then they also worked with teachers just last Thursday on this. So I'm going to let her talk about that.
All right. Good evening. So in addition to, before the teachers saw anything, reorganizing all of the standards, moving things so that we had a new set of performance scales and abbreviated standards, we also created a document to show teachers what their new standards were in alignment with the Inspire Science units, and then also showed them where that standard came from before, so that they had a sense of, oh, last year this was at second grade and now it's at this grade. So they had that kind of correlation document. We also developed a transition plan to help teachers make adjustments during the shift so that we can avoid repeating any lessons or concepts that were previously learned, and to make sure that there's no essential concepts that get skipped before students get to 5th grade, because anytime you move things around, you end up with some repetition. So when that happened, and it was only really 2 grade levels where it was a big issue, we developed lesson plans that teachers can use instead of the Inspire materials during that kind of transitional year, so that when they're, like, for example, in 1st grade, students will now be studying plant and animal structures and functions, and that was something that was in kindergarten last year. So students moving from kindergarten to 1st would have the same lessons and materials. Right. We can't just skip it for a couple reasons. First of all, kindergarten is a developmental year for students, and what they bring in kindergarten sometimes needs a little bit of bolstering to begin with, but also what they're learning in 1st grade is related to animal traits and offspring and parents and plants and things like that as well. And it's pretty critical that they understand structures and functions in order to get to that piece. And so we put together some lessons that teachers can use instead that sort of serve as a pre-assessment, so they can see, are kindergartners already coming in with this information? Because if they are, then maybe we just need to review plant parts and, you know, different types of functions of animal, you know, bodies. Or if they need more detail, we have some other kinds of lessons, elements that they can pull in. So we did that just in those areas where that was necessary. We also attended to the multi-age classrooms as well, because they have a whole different situation with half of the class having learned one curriculum and the other half not having got. So we have a transition plan for everybody all set. And then we created skeletons of the new annual plans. So we took all the work the teachers did on the previous annual plans and just moved everything around. So we didn't get rid of anything. So anyone who worked really hard on those plans could know that their work did not get discarded. It just got moved. The major differences in the annual plan was just looking at the shifts in the standards and checking the alignment from our Arizona standards to the book in Inspire, because Inspire is NGSS aligned and Arizona moved concepts to different places. They also moved science and engineering practices to different standards. And so we had the teachers last week when we met take a look at what Inspire was laying out for their standards, compared them to our standards, and then identified lessons we don't need to teach because it's covering things that aren't in our standards, and that helps them be more efficient and go into depth in different areas that might be more necessary, or any gaps where Inspire doesn't get at a particular science and engineering practice. And then they could supplement with our other resources. 2 of them that the teachers really like are Generation Genius and Mystery Science. And so they were able to pull those different pieces in. It was also really nice that Generation Genius and Mystery have created some new lessons since we last looked at our annual plan, so that gave them a chance to incorporate some of that in there as well. When we met last week to work with this, we had 2 team members from every grade level across the district. I think there was one where someone could not make it, and so Kevin helped out with that piece at 3rd grade. And half of the team's finished, so that's 3 of the plans. The other 3 are almost done, and we've got teachers wanting to continue to work on it over the summer, so they'll be finishing that up, and we'll work with them on that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the teacher responses. So having a chance to work with the teachers, I asked for some comments that I could share with you all as well, so you could get that sense of where the teachers were coming from with this. But I will say, anytime Cheryl or I would visit an elementary school, anytime we were meeting with K-5 teachers for any reason, we would kind of put it out there, hey, how do you feel about this thing happening? Because we know our K-5 teachers have been through a lot of curricular changes recently, and the last thing we want to do is add something else for them. And they are wonderful, skilled, fantastic people who will do anything, but they shouldn't have to do extra work if it's not necessary. And they were just relieved, even though they know it means they won't be teaching the same things they taught last year in every case. So these are some of the comments. A 1st grade teacher said, this is a positive change, so we're able to actually teach from our own grade level and not have to adapt to a younger or older student version. A 3rd grade teacher, and this is worth noting, 3rd grade's entire curriculum is changing for next year. They are not teaching anything the same way they did last year. There's one standard, but it's very generic, and it actually is a standard that's repeated in different grade levels about objects affecting other objects when they're not touching, but that applies to a variety of things. So their entire curriculum is changing, and this teacher said units and materials will make sense for the grade levels they're being used for. It was a huge challenge adapting materials for grade levels they weren't intended for, such as 5th grade materials for 3rd grade. This teacher also pointed out that she never got her own teacher's editions because of the sharing of resources, so having a chance to have a teacher's edition of her own to be able to access those materials more easily was just very exciting for her. And then the 4th grade teacher said it's more fluid, topics build on each other, and just commented on the ease of use. And I think that consistency in the science storylines fits in a lot better with that 3-dimensional science learning that we're looking for our students anyway. The textbooks do a wonderful job of starting with a scientific phenomenon and having kids dig in and explore the concepts behind it and then returning to it. You can't do that if you're chopping up all of the lessons and teaching them in different spots. So it really helps to restore the intention behind that 3-dimensional science. So if you have any questions.
I have a question. This is for implementation in the fall, right?
Yes.
Okay, like, we're ready. Okay.
Seems like a pretty easy sell.
It's
why
a
we're
lot
so
of
excited to
work,
bring
but
it.
easy sell,
Appreciate
yes.
the enthusiasm, but you had me at hello. So.
My only concern is I think about all these things moving around is, wow, how do you make sure that this, and you mentioned the 3rd grader who's going into 4th grade, all that's different. So how do we make sure that in 4th grade, they've got what they would have had in 3rd grade and still have what they need in 4th grade? I mean, that's...
Yeah, the transition plan details all of that from unit to unit. So it will say,
Yeah,
hey, teach
that
unit 1
is-
exactly the way it is. Some of them will say, teach unit 2, but leave out lesson 2 because they already got it, and then replace this
wow.
with this
The
lesson.
level
So
of detail that Kevin and Leah went to make sure that every contingency was
Yep.
covered is incredible.
Just the 2 of you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the hard part will be the transition years as we, and then after 4 or 5 years, it'll be much easier.
I would
Yeah,
think
it's
after
really-
even 1 year.
For most of the discipline, for most grade levels, it's 1 year. 5th grade has to do something for 2 years, and it's
Okay.
only one of their pieces because something moved to 3rd
Got
and
it.
to 4th, but we've accounted for that, and
Wow.
Well, you know, every time I listen to a curriculum presentation, I just feel tired. It's just such meticulous work.
it's a lot of work.
And it's a ton of work. And what I really appreciate about this presentation and your approach to this process, I think your quote was the lightest lift possible for our teachers. And it's very evident to me that you approached this from the perspective that we don't want to bog down our teachers with all of this stuff. And it sounds like you guys have done just a yeoman's job in smoothing out that load for our teachers. And I really, truly appreciate that. And this, as Doug said, just seems like a no-brainer. It's hopefully going to have positive effects all the way around. And thank you for all of your hard work. My God.
And we really appreciate our teacher teams for coming together and working on this even further and coming in the
So
summer too.
enthusiastically
Yeah,
too. So it's-
I have the best job, I feel like, to work with our
Because
teachers.
by bringing them together, it's not something done to them, it's
Right.
done
Yes.
with them.
And they appreciated that they didn't have to move anything themselves, that was all laid out. In fact, the sigh across the room when we told them what we had already done before they got there was,
Yeah.
How
And
long
the
did
fact
that
that you're-
take you to do that?
oh, I don't want to tell you. And forget, never mind how long it took me to switch them around the first time when we had to align them with so we'll just.
Yeah.
And it's a resource, as Leah said, that Kevin and Leah created these lessons herself. Kevin didn't help with this part. But these resources, the teachers are going to be using these for years, for the transition years. They're going to be pulling out slides because they are so well done. And it's just this slide deck that has it's no fuss, no fuss. You just go, you press and play, and you go. And so it was really well done on Leah's part to fix those resources for the teachers.
The fact that you're both standing here with a smile on
Yeah,
your
no,
face
we are
is-
thrilled with this.
This is
I mean, that's
This is the
exciting.
best thing we've worked on all year.
No, even with
We have
the
to
trudging
feel that
through
you're at
it.
the end of this project.
Well, that's so exciting because I know how good both of you are because you've been doing this for a long time and doing a great job. But the fact that they can stand here with a
And
smile on their
yeah,
face
smiling
after,
about it,
after
absolutely.
doing all this is
However irritating it was, we were smiling the whole time because we knew it would be better in the end. And we'd rather have it be on us than on the teachers any day, so.
Absolutely.
A lot of pages of highlights.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, the yellow highlights
Just going
are
through it for
things
fun
that
here,
were
yeah,
added,
it's-
strike-throughs, moved.
Yep, gotcha. And as you said, nothing that we've previously approved has been eliminated. It's
Correct.
simply going to appear somewhere else.
There's a tiny difference in that we originally had removed the word argument that was
that's right, I
in
forgot about
the K-5 Arizona standards, because our ELA standards in K-5 don't use the word argument, it's opinion until it gets to 6th grade. But after Kevin spent some time studying the tests from Arizona State and looking at just some other pieces of information and looking at how the language is used in our resources, we just reverted back to argument for science, just to help students get used to that kind of language. The science and engineering practice is about argument, so that's it. That's the only other.
They need to know that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to
And the state already had it that way, so there's no,
Yeah.
we didn't do anything radical there.
Well, great presentation. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks on this one. All right. Item 5.5, approval of classified wages. This is again going to be an action item. Dr. Bartlett.
Yes, so attached is the proposed 2024-2025 classified wage schedule. And it has been modified to represent, we've taken off the first 4 steps and then elongated it 4 steps out. So there's and then we're recommending a 1-step, horizontal step movement for all classified employees, which will result in a 5% increase for all classified employees. It's an increase of our maintenance and operation budget of $27,383. And then we're also proposing a 5% increase for all our classified exempt employees. They are not on this schedule, but the increased cost for the maintenance and operation budget for that is $35,557. And the increase will not impact any of our programs that we currently have in place. We can maintain all of our program and staffing formulas with this increase.
Wow.
What's the minimum wage right now?
13, either 67 or
What, hasn't hit 15 yet?
So we're ahead of that?
we're ahead of that,
And ahead
yes.
of it.
We're staying ahead of that? Yep.
The state has not hit 15.
It hasn't hit 15.
And there's been talk about Pima County hitting 15, but we haven't.
We haven't here yet, okay.
We are ahead. So going back to then our discussion about our substitutes,
Yes.
range 20, or range 22 will be that $15.63 that will be for the district receptionist. And then our EAs would make $19.04 an hour
When you say district receptionist, that's the receptionist at MAC.
at the
MAC.
administration
So
center.
not a receptionist in any of the schools. We don't
No.
get substitutes.
No.
So that's the person who's in the front lobby at
In
Matt.
the new
MAC.
bubble at MAC,
Yes.
yes.
Well
I like that
protected.
bubble.
Yes.
I think it came out pretty well.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
Sure, yes. You got me.
It
We have bars and.
Have you been there since the new front door is in and it's
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I haven't
I think
been.
so. Have I seen the new front door?
I have.
glass and around?
Yeah, I
That's
think
going
so.
around.
Yeah,
It's
it looks
very
nice. It's not bad. It could be worse. Anyhow,
It
all
was-
right.
It was better than I thought it was gonna be.
This is an action item tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, but I'll start out.
Okay.
I move that the governing board approve the proposed 2024-2025 classified wage schedule as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the classified wage schedule for next year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. You want to continue, Carol?
Okay. I move that the governing board approve 1 horizontal step movement for all classified employees on the proposed classified wage schedule.
Second.
Motion and a second for 1 horizontal step movement for classified employees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And
I move that the governing board approve a 5% increase for classified exempt employees for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
motion and a second on the 5% increase for classified exempt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion again carries 4-0. Thank you. Item 5.6 is now the approval of classified notices of appointment. Dr. Bartlett,
Yes,
action
so-
item.
Yes, presented for your action tonight is the approval of the attached list for all classified staff being offered a notice of appointment for the 2024-2025 school year. And then at the very end, there is a copy of the notice of appointment that will be given tomorrow. We'll begin sending these out to all of these employees on the list.
Monday?
It's a busy day, yes.
I'm busy.
Mhm.
Is that done by the principals at the schools? I know they do the teachers, but who
No,
does
this is
all-
done by Human Resources.
Done by Human Resources? Gotcha.
I mean, they're all
Electronic,
electronic, they're gone now.
yes.
Oh, that's right, they are all gone.
How many
Or
people?
most of them, I guess.
This
There's
is
a few,
15 pages of,
A lot of people.
how many people was that?
It's over 300. 300. Yes. And we still have more hiring to do for that.
How- I
What were
haven't
you gonna
asked that
ask?
yet, but I will. How are we doing on our hiring, both classified and certified?
Classified, we have, most of the vacancies are in the educational, either classroom EA or the special education EA. That's where the bulk of our, in our certified, we are chipping away slowly at our openings. We have, most of our openings are at the elementary level, if you can believe that, which is not typical. So we have a half-time kindergarten available. We have 2 second-grade teachers available, vacant, 1 third-grade teacher, 2 fourth-grade teachers, and a .5 ELD teacher. Then we also have 3 special ed vacancies still, 2 at the high school and 1 at the elementary level.
Those are EAs?
No.
No,
Special ed
just special ed
teachers.
teachers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. We just got a application today for a special education teacher, so, they're
They're there, but.
coming in.
Yeah.
We have 1 math teacher at the middle school that we're still searching for, an art teacher at the middle school, and just today, our field science teacher asked to be released from the contract, so. Our field science teacher, so we'll be looking for a field science teacher.
Wow.
You're gonna be busy.
Yeah.
Does this compare unfavorably to prior years? At the
Actually,
elementary
no.
level?
At the
we-
elementary
yeah.
level, yes, but the middle and high school, this is fantastic.
Oh, good.
Yes, this is fantastic.
Take the
this
wins
is
where we
only
get them.
one opening at the high school, vacancy at the high school, the field?
Yes, the field
Or is
science
it special ed there?
and special, and 2
And
special
special ed,
eds.
yeah.
Mhm. But it's fantastic. Normally we're looking for math teachers at the high school
Yeah.
still at this time and science teachers. That's just not the case.
Are they spread amongst the 4 different elementary
Yes.
schools? So there's no one school that has 6 openings?
No, Manzanita and Sunrise Drive, being the 2 biggest, have
Because-
more openings than the smaller schools. So,
Well, we know.
but we're
that
not
you
looking
will-
for a Spanish immersion teacher
Right.
or a Chinese immersion teacher
Right,
or anything like that are more difficult to find. So,
Mhm.
it's already June 11th, but it's only June 11th,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Boy, this is an optimist.
I know.
I've been doing HR for a while now, so yes, I think
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah, well,
You
she
will.
will, all summer long, I know.
we will.
Note who's putting a sweater on.
I see you putting a sweater
Wow.
on. That doesn't happen very
I'm
often.
the one who complains about it being hot in here.
No, I've been wanting to do this all night.
They give me a hard time, my board colleagues.
All right.
Freezing them out.
If there's no further question or discussion, this is also an action item this evening.
I move the governing board approve the classified staff notices of appointment for the 2024-2025 school year and direct that they be issued as presented to the staff members listed.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the classified staff notices of appointment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 5.7, approval of superintendent's performance pay, another action item. It says my name, but I'm going to turn it over to Amy Kraus.
Thank you. This item is on the agenda for approval of the superintendent's performance pay, which is a feature of Arizona statutes that permits the governing board to hold back a portion of the superintendent's pay as a performance pay after a formal review. And in this district, going back, it's been a while. Is it on this? It's been many years, I think.
Years,
Since
every year since I've been on the board.
2011.
I remember negotiating this.
You did. Welcome back, Carol. In Dr. Camarzell's contract, in addition to her base salary, the district sets aside $5,000 as contingent performance pay funds, and those funds are theoretically earned based on progress and achievement toward agreed upon goals. And I think that one thing that's important to know about this process is that this isn't just a matter of, oh, did the superintendent do a good job this year? You know, how much should we give her? But this is a culmination of a very formalized process where we as a board have set performance goals. We get a mid-year report where, and lots of times we also receive updates along the way. There's also a final report, an annual report that we have with the superintendent. Those are in executive sessions. Although the goals are established in a public meeting, there's a formalized process about how board members review those performance goals and assess whether those goals have been met. And of course, Dr. Camarzell, although she is responsible for those performance goals, they are achieved by many other people. Dr.
Under her
Bartlett,
guidance.
Joe Castro, you know, everybody who's part of the administrative team. And so this year, our board met in executive session, and we reviewed Dr. Camarzell's and the district's progress towards the goals we set last year. And of those $5,000, we have proposed and agreed that Dr. Camarzell should receive all $5,000 of her performance pay. So although those funds, $5,000, are tied to the annual performance review, obviously this past year, I think that this is an appropriate time to acknowledge and recognize that, you know, first of all, many of these goals, even in this last annual performance review, are goals that were set several years ago, and they're things that take many years to accomplish. And so I think it's appropriate to recognize and acknowledge that Dr. Camarzell's legacy with our school district is a long legacy of accomplishments as our superintendent, which I think at the end of her tenure later this month, she will have completed 28 years as our superintendent, and that is just a few years shy of the combined tenure of all the superintendents before her. And I think that makes her the longest serving superintendent in Arizona, and that is to our benefit, our students' benefit. Dr. Camarzell came to our school district in 1996. She came from public schools in Nebraska, where she was a teacher and a principal and an assistant superintendent, and 6 years as a superintendent. And when she came here in 96, that of course was the same year that our high school had its first graduating class. So I think she probably attended maybe she missed that first one, but every or nearly every graduating class in our school district, in the high school's history. When Dr. Camarzell had a farewell interview with the Catalina Foothills magazine, she said that the most satisfying part of her work was the years that she's been expanding programs and courses for CFSD students. And you're welcome to, I just started thinking about some of the things that I'm aware of, you know, which is really only the last, 10 or 15 years that I've been really paying attention to what's going on here. But, I think it's fair to say that under Dr. Camarzell's leadership, she transformed our world languages curriculum. Yay! To include a pre-K to through 12, grade 12 Spanish instruction. And that's separate, of course, from Spanish immersion that starts in our preschool and goes all the way through high school, and also Chinese immersion. Dr. Cameron oversaw the building of this incredible preschool. And I don't think it was any coincidence that it includes an incredible space for teacher development, because that was also, you know, part of her, the value that she places on the teachers, teaching as a profession, and the need for teachers to continually have time to collaborate and work together to achieve a common goal. Of course, there's just the recent building of the orchestra building at the high school, and all of the vocational pathways that are now offered in our high school through and in conjunction with JTED. Dr. Camerzell also said in one of our interviews that developing a strategic plan was very important to her work, and there have been a couple different strategic plans, but the strategic plan that we're now and continue to be working with is one that was developed just before I came on the board, so about 10 years. It's been about 10 years now. And what I think is incredible about that document, which is, of course, is a document that defines our aspirations and gives a roadmap of how we're going to achieve them. And it's, you know, for all of us. It's for the public, it's for the board, it's for the teachers, it's for administrators. It's our guidepost, and it is really a living document in that it has been able to be transformed and to grow and to evolve based on, you know, what the data tells us. What does research tell us about how students work and how they, you know, ultimately we're all here to make sure that our students achieve what they can achieve. And so I think that that strategic plan is a legacy that Dr. Camerzell leaves behind that is going to, has been transformational and will continue to be impactful to all of our students. And of course, we've already mentioned today that Dr. Camerzell has always advocated for increased teacher pay to create a culture of professionalism, because it's important, and we all agree and support this, that we need to continually show staff and teachers and others that they are valued and they are supported. Of course, Dr. Camerzell weathered some storms in her 28 years. There was the construction of the junior parking lot, the bus barn. Carol was here for all of these, right? Mm-hmm. The entrance to the preschool here at La Paloma, right? That was a big one. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, which really brought challenges that nobody could have anticipated or planned for. One of the most important challenges that Dr. Camerzell faced in 2008 was that financial crisis that decimated public funding for public education. And yet, and I think we've said this many times around this table, especially when in budget season, she is unbelievable with the money, how it's managed, how she finds ways to make it work, to be responsible, to be transparent, not to cut programs, not to cut teachers. And even in that financial crisis, Dr. Camerzell held, you know, student programs, student access to programs and courses at the forefront, so that when other school districts were cutting arts and PE, you know, we were not doing that, and certainly not, well, not to the same degree that was being done elsewhere. And I don't think that that's because we have more money necessarily. I think it's because we had Dr. Camerzell at the helm, who was going to make sure that that's what happened, and it did. And I also think it's fair to say that the fact that our community has passed bonds and overrides for 3 decades now shows that the recognition of her extraordinary leadership in public public school finances, which is not easy.
Not easy.
So, although, as I said, although this is Dr. Camerzell's annual performance review, and I will make a motion for her $5,000, I really think that it's the culmination, you know, of a legacy that, you know, there is no greater good in the whole purpose of public education. There's no greater good creating from learning in a public school education than what public school education does for our community. And going back to that strategic plan, which now focuses on transfer skills, I think, you know, Dr. Camerzell has literally graduated thousands of students who are now citizens of the world, in our community, outside of our community, outside of the world, and her impact, I think, has been tremendous. And so I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Camerzell for her service to CFSD students, to our community, to our schools, or the people who work in our schools, the people who come in contact with our schools. And I just wanted to, you know, say publicly how much and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone else here, appreciate everything that Dr. Camerzell has given us. And we all, you know, wish her all the best in the next chapter, whatever she chooses to do. We'll be lucky to have her.
My gosh, yes. So do you want to make a motion?
With that, I will move the governing board to approve the 2023-2024 performance pay for the superintendent, Dr. Mary Camerzell, in the amount of $5,000 as presented.
We have one of the most eloquent motions ever made at our board table.
And lengthy,
To
sorry.
no, not at all. To approve a $5,000 performance award for Dr. Camerzell for the 2023-2024 school year. Is there a second for that?
I second it.
I imagine there'd be a third and a fourth here
third
soon.
and a fourth.
Well, all right, is there anyone want to add any commentary?
Well, I'm certainly not prepared anything so eloquent. I think it's important as we reflect back and look at all the fine teachers and administrators that have worked with Dr. Camerzell through the years, and how she's built the team.
Absolutely.
Mary has always worked with the board, agenda planning.
Yeah.
Two of us being at agenda planning, bringing the board along, educating the board. You know, we haven't had big fights, superintendent and boards, and that's key. That is key to a successful district. When Dr. Camerzell came here, because I actually was living in the district right before she came here, I was kind of aghast. We had a new high school. A principal of the high school at that time had never been a principal before. And trying to create a new high school. You know, yes, you raise your eyebrows. It was, and it was, she had a lot of challenges when she came here. And I don't think we all realize in this community, it was really until the high school was built, we were a K-8. We were a K-12 district, but we sent our kids someplace else.
Right.
And so we weren't really, you know, accountable for what we did K-8. The curriculums, what we were teaching in the different, for elementary schools, it wasn't the same. It might not even have been in the same grade. And so they're feeding into two middle schools, and then they go off on their way, and all of a sudden we have a high school. And she brought all this together. I mean, she brought all this together. And I think that's, it's remarkable, that, that she stayed on after what she had to be through. And I guess to some, you know, well, to everyone's credit, she read the community, she read the board. You talk about the strategic plan, I mean, you know, the first strategic plan for this district was formed under her guidance. And I just, you know, I can't say enough about that. She's one reason this board member's been around so long, I'm sure. But it's really been quite remarkable. And I don't know that any of us will ever realize just how important it is to have that consistency of leadership and someone who is known in the community, who makes it a point to go out and build and work with the community. You know, bonds and overrides, they were passed before, but the high school had trouble getting built.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that happened before she came.
Right.
Granted, but it's been quite remarkable. We have been so fortunate to have a leader of her caliber. Just so fortunate. And I feel so fortunate to work with her for so many years.
I just want to underline one thing that both of you said was Mary's ability to put together a stellar team.
Yeah.
And it was that ability that has allowed us to get into this transition year to a new superintendent who's been an integral part of that team that Mary put together. And once again, in true Mary fashion, we were presented with a great opportunity for her successor to come from her team. And I'm really looking forward to, as much as we will miss Mary, I am looking forward to next year and new beginnings and working with Denise in her new capacity. And thank Mary for creating such a stellar team, such that we had the ability to choose and have continuity by being able to promote from within. I think that is also one of Mary's greatest legacies. So now that we have a motion, did we vote yet?
We have motions and
We've
seconds.
had a
We need to
motion,
vote.
we have a second, and then we had some additional commentary. You're good? You're good? Okay, then let's go ahead and vote on this money here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
I
carries.
think that it was a heck of a lot
4,
more money than
0.
that.
I know, if only, yeah, if only. All right. The superintendent's performance pay is approved. Next item, discussion, thanks, Amy. Thanks, by the way, that was
My
really wonderful.
pleasure.
I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Discussion and reports, 6.1, Arizona legislative and governmental activity.
Give us a budget.
Yeah.
Give us a budget.
Give us a-
Anything else
What else is there to say? Increase the aggregate expenditure limit.
Yeah, there's that.
can
Oh,
do
yeah,
that,
I have to do
too.
that yet
That's
still.
still hanging
I still have to
around.
do
Still
that.
hanging out
You're right.
That's it.
All right.
No agenda plan, oh, I'm sorry.
Future agenda considerations, anybody?
There's no agenda planning tomorrow, right?
I don't think we're doing agenda planning after
No.
this last meet, no, because we
Planned
already
the
have done,
last
we've
two.
already done
In
the last
August?
one. So I think we're good. We'll do, yeah, when we get closer to August. All right, with that, I could entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those who want to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you all.
Request one.
Well, yeah.
Thank you all for staying the whole meeting.
Yeah.
That was nice.